From there, we move into one of the more complex portions of agency intel. This is the lead system. This is where your call center agents are going to be spending most of their time, so we need to make sure that it's configured the way that you want the automation to work. The first disposition delay time. That is controlling the amount of delay on a lead when it is first going to be dispositioned. Not by me, but today. So if the current date time equals December 31st, and there are no lead views for December 31st of a potential customer record, how long do you want that agent to have to reside on that record before they can move? Do they need to be on there 45 seconds just to make sure they're leaving voicemails? Or, as you saw, is it 0? And if it's the first disposition for today, we don't want to force them to be on the lead. We'll just take them at their word. They're doing their job the way that they're supposed to be. You can do an all disposition delay time, which means every single lead that they pull up through the lead system has a 20-second timer from the time the lead pops until they can disposition to finalize and move to the next lead. We can control the number of reschedules that an agent can assign to themselves in one day, and then how long they are allowed to hold that lead for without obviously making a sale, a do not call, or transitioning into another department if it's a cross-sell. Do you allow lead assignment? Again, this can be controlled from the associate profile, but this is a global setting, so you can just set it once if you want to allow all associates to assign leads to themselves. Do you allow associate reschedules? This can be done globally. You can define that as no if you don't want people to do any reschedules. And you can force a disposition for each lead. What this does is if I opened up a lead and did not add a disposition to it, the next time I attempt to go into a call campaign, I will be forced to disposition those leads I forgot prior to pulling any new leads. You can also control the location and style of the disposition window inside of Agency Intel. The two styles are the window, which gives you the drop-down menu, and the bar, which is just a selectable buttons for each of the dispositions. And then, obviously, at the top and the bottom of your page, do you want to see the disposition window at the top, or do you want to see the customer information at the top and then the disposition as you scroll down towards the bottom? There are many components that all coincide to make a successful call campaign. The first of those is going to be the lead types. You can quickly and easily create and modify lead types right here in the menu. The green plus, as always, adds new. And then the search glass on the page defines the edit. The only thing for a lead type is a name. Is it active? Is it refundable? And then you can select a certain number of dispositions that can only be used for this lead type. You do not have to, but this will supersede the call campaign if you define them in there as well. So if I say that demo request can only be dispositioned as answering machine, demo, or duplicate, then those are the only 3 dispositions that will be pulled for this lead type, regardless of the call campaign. From there, we migrate down to the call campaigns themselves and how to configure and control those. We've got the green plus in the upper right-hand corner as always. I'm going to go into an existing call campaign. The ID is system generated. The name is user defined. It is what you want the associate to see when they go to lead system and they're selecting it from a drop down. Is it health? Is it life? Is it group? Is it property casualty? Are we only pulling retention? Are we doing a cold campaign of 90 days old leads? That will allow the agent to know where or what call campaign they're supposed to be in specifically. Then we can define, is it active, and do all associates have access? If the all associate access box is not checked, we would go to the employee profile and add these call campaigns per profile. Then obviously we have the two modes for both power dialer, which is one lead next, and then predictive dialer, where we define the number of consecutive calls, answer machine detection, and all of that happens on the background. And then the screen pops to the associate when we get a human on the phone. Default script is going to allow you to define which of the configured scripts that are pulled up on the scripts tab by default in this particular call campaign. Priority order, just where it resides in the list, or sort order. The recycle of days, as it defines right here, is the number of days when to try a processed lead again if no others are available. Inside of Agency Intel, we can classify leads as one of two things, or one of three things. It is active, it is processed, or completed. A do not call, a not interested, and an invalid number, those are things that are completed. But processed is more, I can pick the maximum number of dispositions on each type of disposition, whether it be 3, 5, or 20 for like an answering machine. Once that lead has reached 20 answering machine dispositions, we mark it as processed, which essentially states that you've exhausted as much resources as you're currently willing to allot to this potential customer for now. Take it out of my call campaign so we're not using it. Now, the recycle days will allow you to define that after 90 days, if a lead was processed or marked as processed 90 days ago, and this call campaign has 0 active leads available because they're all waiting or waiting for their recycle based upon a delay of the disposition, then you can go back to those processed leads and maybe give them 1 or 2 more shots. Extra time delay, it is, as it's referenced, the number of days that you do not want to call a lead after calling once. So I may only want, after I purchase a lead, I may want to only call them once every 3 days. So I'm going to do 2 days as a time delay, and then my disposition might be 4 hours. So instead of delaying it 4 hours, now I've delayed it 52 hours because I added an extra 48 to it. This call campaign will allow you to assign a lead to an associate, whether or not reschedules are allowed in. So a checkbox on no rescheduled leads means that if it is classified as a category of reschedule, it does not come up in this call campaign. Reasons for that are if I'm working on a retention or a client campaign, I don't want reschedules from potential customers interfering with the retention that I'm currently doing. Do you allow lead assignment? This allows me to assign it myself. This assigns the lead to me. Do we allow reschedules inside of the call campaign? Do any associate leads, by associate leads it means one that is assigned to me, are they allowed inside of this call campaign? Or is it only associate leads, which means if it doesn't belong to me, it doesn't come up in this campaign. As I mentioned earlier, the disposition results, we can control exactly which dispositions are able to be selected from this call campaign. The max dispositions, very similar to what I mentioned about it having a max dispositions on the results, is also on the call campaign. So then if I put this as 32, then any lead that has 32 history records, regardless of what they are, whether they're answer machine or voicemail or appointment set or reschedule, after it reaches its 30-second disposition, it will no longer be able to be called by this call campaign. Number of consecutive calls, very self-explanatory. It's the number of consecutive calls predictive dialer will make. Whether I'm making 1 at a time, 3 at a time, or 7 at a time is going to be a little bit of personal preference, as well as lead pool depth. You don't want to be making 7 calls at a time and expecting to work 8 hours if you only have 200 leads in there. The filter criteria. This is where we define what pool of leads the call campaign has available to itself. So we can select all pertinent lead types for this particular call campaign. Then from there, are we filtering the licensed states, which means that if the license and appointment is not on my employee profile for the lead that, or for the state that this lead resides, can I access it? So that's just a quick checkbox, and when it's unchecked, even if I have 0 licenses and appointments on my associate profile, I still will be able to access all leads from this call campaign. The from days old and 2 days old, this is how you're going to be able to quickly and easily segment your high producers from your average. So we create a from days old of 1 day to 2 days, then only my newest leads are in this call campaign, and then I can only assign it to the people that I want, or I can create a production requirement down here at the bottom and let the system do it itself. We'll get to that portion in just a moment. The DOB from and to, this is going to be a calendar picker, so you can pick from May 1st of 1963, I do believe is the math for people turning 65 this year. I apologize if my math is off. But that will allow you to do a from and to, so if you're doing like a Medicare campaign, or I'm doing something that is generation specific, to ensure that I'm only reaching out to the people that I want because their date of birth and their associate record or in their lead record falls within these date parameters. The other one is days old, as opposed to picking from a calendar and just doing a hard January to March of this year. This is going to be ever changing, so I can say that, do the math of how many days old would a person be that's turning 65 right now. Obviously plus or minus 2 or 3 days based upon leap year and it rotating. But then I can, within 2 days, I can have a ever-evolving Medicare campaign, so the only people who are inside of it are 65 years old or turning 65 in the next 3 to 6 months. The additional filter for SQL here, this would be something along the lines of if I wanted to say, okay, well, this campaign only applies if source is equal to John's leads. And only if the source is John's leads will this call campaign pull it, even if it matches, even if other leads match every other parameter except for this one, it still won't pull those because it doesn't have a match on the source. Geographical filter is exactly that. You can filter out call campaigns based upon specific states. By default, this entire area is blank, and that means to select all states. Once you add a single state because you want to filter out a few counties, you do have to add all other states. It only selects all if the entire geofilter is null. Same way works for the counties within inside of that state. If it is null, it is all for every single county, or I can go in and check all and then uncheck Anchorage and Denali for Arkansas, and then update. I do not believe that was Arkansas.
Alaska.
I think I clicked Alaska. You are correct. I was looking at Arkansas when I said that, so please disregard. All right, the production requirements, as I just briefly touched on earlier for hot, warm, cold, what this does is it allows you to control this call campaign. So I can say within the past 5 days, if you have 4 app counts submitted or more, then you have access to this call campaign. If in the last 5 days you have not submitted 4 applications, then this call campaign will just magically, essentially, disappear from your drop-down list until you adhere to the production requirements defined within the call campaign. Last portion is going to be the sort order. We do have some defaults right here for you. You can also do your own custom sort, like attempts ascending. So now, instead of youngest, oldest, newest, oldest, or sequential, now I have sorted by the attempts. And then descending, I did say ascending, but it switched it for me. Descending would obviously be from the highest number of attempts working backwards to the lowest number of attempts. And then the ascending would be working from 0 attempts, working your way up regardless of how old the lead is. If it was 3 weeks old and had 0 attempts, it would still have a higher priority than one that just came in yesterday but did have 1 attempt. Sub-campaigns is where you can add the other call campaigns you've created to automate the workflow, so when there are no leads available in the master campaign, it will automatically fail into these sub-campaigns, so hot, warm, cold, to ensure that you're not running out of leads. Alrighty. From there, we can assign and unassign on a global scale call campaigns. We can assign associates to these particular lead types or anyone that falls under these managers. And we can define what types or what lead filters or call campaigns. So we can just give the data list call campaign to anyone with a manager, and then I assign, and then it is automatically assigned. If I want to remove the agency list from all satellite managers, then we just click the unassign, and then it will unassign from there as well. Alright, so now we're into the lead statuses. Those are the lead status is as a lead comes in, it's going to obviously be stamped with a new status, meaning that it has not been attempted to be contacted, sold, nothing. And we can filter those out of the lead manager. All statuses can be filtered. As always, you get your green plus in the upper right, and then your edit down here. The status is just that simple. It is another option of filter criteria. You give it a description. The ID is generated by the system. The sort priority is here, where you want it to be in the list, and then whether or not it is an active lead type. The results are going to explain a little more why we do types or lead statuses like this. So then as it comes in new, and then it's disposition, something like answering machine, no message left, it's not contacted, something like a spoke to, try again, or appointment set, could be contacted. If you want to change it to, quote sent, quote responded, and then sale, whatever the case might be, you can create those lead statuses that are going to allow you to query or report off of those later. Lead sources, very simple. It's where are you buying your leads from. As always, you've got the green plus. And then who are you buying the leads from? The description is going to be locked once you create it, so please ensure that your spelling is correct, especially if you're doing an API post from a lead vendor. If it is active and whether or not it's a policy selection or quick check boxes, if it's refundable and for how many days. And then if you'd like to add a countdown timer to this specific source, you can give people 90 seconds to qualify the lead. Maybe if you can disqualify a lead in 90 seconds, I don't know, you're not getting charged for it or something, and then you can define a color that comes up, so that way when you see that disposition box in red and that 90-second countdown timer, you know, or your agents, your employees know that they need to qualify the lead based upon their training. All of those are located here, as I said. The plus will add, and then the edit icon is directly on each and every individual source. The results, this is where you're going to control the call campaign. How often a lead comes back, whether or not it changes the status, whether or not it changes the type, if it's complete or processed. This is the control mechanism for the call campaigns. You can always add a new disposition, or you can edit one that's already existing. Inside of here is where you define what this disposition does. As always, ID is system generated. The result is what you want the agent to see in the drop-down menu. Try to keep them short. The longer they are, the harder it is for people to see them when they're dispositioning, especially from a mobile device. Description is going to be for the administrative personnel. When you come in here 2-3 years after you've set up the system, you may need to remind yourself why you created this disposition. Adding a detailed description will be able to do that. Active is obviously whether or not it's going to be capable of being selected in the call campaign. The delay. The delay is the amount of minutes that you want to delay this lead until it's called again. 240 obviously is in minutes. It's 4 hours. So if I disposition a lead at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, the earliest time that it's going to come back up in a call campaign is going to be 12 o'clock. Now, if I have previously not finalized or reschedules or a new priority lead coming in based upon sort order or attempts, things like that, now those will delay it. But this is the earliest that a lead will come back after you've dispositioned it based upon this delay. Max recycles. It is the maximum amount of times that you want to disposition this type before it's processed. It's the one that we spoke about earlier. The add customer and add associate are very similar functionality inside of the results. They will redirect to a new record based upon this disposition. The main difference is the add customer adds a customer. So if you're working through a list of leads and trying to sell, the add associate will take that lead information and create an employee profile primarily utilized for recruiting campaigns. Complete, the checkbox means that this disposition will ensure that the lead is never called again through a call campaign. These are, like I mentioned earlier, for do not calls or sales, invalid phone number, things like that. If you want to force a note on this disposition, this checkbox will allow you to do that. The refund is the same. If you are issued a refund, then you can report off of that. No, this button does not automatically issue you a refund. That just gives you the ability to generate a list to send to the lead provider so you can get them to reimburse your account. Reschedule does the date picker pop up when you select this disposition to force them to pick a date and a time to reschedule this lead to. The reschedule handling. Once a lead is set to a reschedule, it will be stamped with the rescheduled date time and then delayed based upon the other results. If an employee assigns that reschedule to themselves, they cannot be accessed by the general pool unless someone administratively removes that reschedule. Unless you have a disposition that will, and select your option, you can clear the reschedule utilizing the clear. You can add a delay to a reschedule based upon the delay time at the top, or you can delay and clear the agent. What that will do is it will add this delay timer and then remove the associate ID profile off of that lead record, so it no longer belongs to just that one employee. Now it can be accessed by the general reschedule for anyone who has access to that call campaign. The release from associate will do exactly that. It will release the record from the associate if it was assigned to a specific employee profile. You can also change the type of a lead or the status of a lead based upon the result. As I mentioned earlier, a lead comes in, it's new. When you disposition answering machine, it will automatically change the status to not contacted. It's no longer new because it's been attempted, but an answering machine is not a contact, it is an attempt to do so. You can utilize the change lead type for your companies that do a lot of cross-selling. If a lead comes in as health and you occasionally need to transfer them to Medicare or property and casualty because you sell all three business lines, then you use your results and create ones that you call transfer to PNC, transfer to Medicare, transfer to health, and then that will change the type of a lead. You can also force it back to be new because it came in, it was processed as property and casualty, but now you're transferring to health, so now it should be a new status. It gets called first, and then I would delay that maybe 2 or 3 minutes, especially if you're having the associate transfer the call over to another employee who was bringing up the lead manually instead of waiting for the call campaign to populate it. You can also utilize dispositions to post out to a URL. So if you're using a third-party predictive dialer or things like that, then you can use these post URL strings down here in the result to control when to post and what gets posted over. The report settings are controlled by individual disposition. As you can see, answering machine reports as a call and as an attempt, but it was not a contact and was not a sale. Controlling these will allow you to ensure that your reporting off of your leads for ROI and things like that are as accurate as possible. From there, we have the phone scripts and rebuttals, both very similar, but have different functionality. The scripts are going to be a synopsis of what you want the employee to read, and again, you can use the replacement parameters here. So instead of hi is blank there, it will populate their name so they can read directly off of it. Hi is John there. Wait for a response. This is, and instead of leaving a blank for employee name, it would say Jonathan Hayes with Agency Intel, how are you today? And then they're reading right off of the script. You can make them as lengthy as you like. For your newer employees, I know that they really appreciate it, especially if you configure the rebuttals in there as well. So as you've been in the industry quite a while, you know exactly what most people are going to utilize as a talking point to why they can't purchase today. That's where you put the excuse. I have to double check this with my husband. My wife has the wallet right now. Not sure if this is going to be the plan for us. I need to talk it over with my accountant, whatever the case might be. And then you configure their rebuttal down here at the bottom. And then while they are in that lead on the scripts page, they can select the rebuttal or the excuse itself based upon your description of the excuse. and then it will give them the rebuttal right there for them.